In August of 1590, a man named John White rowed a small boat toward a beach in North Carolina. He had been gone for 3 years. On that island ahead of him lived his daughter, his son-in-law, his granddaughter, and 112 other people he had personally left in charge of the most important thing England had ever attempted in the New World. He landed. He pushed through the gate. The houses were standing. The fort was intact. Everything looked exactly as he had left it, except there was no one there, not one person. He called out, "Silence." He searched every building. He dug up the spot where he had buried his own belongings before sailing. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no burned structures. No crosses carved anywhere to signal that something had gone wrong. Just one word cut deep into the wood of a fence post. Croatoan. He stood there and read it. Before he had sailed, White had made an agreement with the colonists. If they ever had to move, they would carve their destination into a tree. If they were in danger, they would carve a cross above it. There was no cross, which meant they left on their own terms. They weren't dragged away, they weren't slaughtered, they made a choice. They went somewhere called Croatoan. White immediately tried to sail there. A storm hit. His anchor cables snapped. His ship was nearly wrecked. He was forced back out to sea. He wrote in his journal that he was confident the colonists were alive. He sailed back to England. He never returned. His granddaughter, Virginia Dare, had been 17 months old the last time he saw her face. He never saw her again. 115 people stepped off the map in 1590. And the only trail they left behind was a single word carved into wood. This is the most famous unsolved mystery in American history. And the version you know is missing the most important part. To understand what happened to those people, you have to understand how they got there. And it was not an accident, it was a gamble. A desperate, underfunded, politically dangerous gamble. In 1584, Sir Walter Raleigh received a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I. Permission to claim land in the Americas on England's behalf. Spain had been doing this for nearly a century. Spain had gold, silver, an empire stretching from Florida to Peru. England had nothing. Raleigh's mandate was simple. Get there, build something, prove England could do what Spain had done. He organized 3 expeditions. The first was reconnaissance. The second brought soldiers. The third, in 1587, was the real thing. Families, farmers, a carpenter, a minister. People who planned to stay. John White was their governor. His daughter Eleanor had crossed the Atlantic pregnant. On August 18, 1587, just 10 weeks after the colonists arrived, Eleanor gave birth to a girl. They named her Virginia, the first English child ever born in the America. 11 days later, John White sailed back to England for supplies. He planned to be gone for a few months. He was gone for 3 years. Not because he didn't try to come back, because England was at war. In 1588, the Spanish Armada launched the largest naval invasion in European history directly at England. Queen Elizabeth needed every ship. White begged. He petitioned. He organized 2 small vessels in 1588. They were attacked by pirates before they crossed the Atlantic. He was beaten, robbed, sent back to England with nothing. He finally secured a return voyage in 1590, 3 years after he last held his granddaughter, and the island was empty. Now here's where the story gets strange. Because Croatoan wasn't a mysterious word to John White. He knew exactly what it meant. Croatoan was the name of an island about 50 miles to the south, now called Hatteras Island. It was also the name of the tribe that lived there, and their leader was a man named Manteo. Manteo had sailed to England twice with earlier expeditions. He spoke English. He had been baptized. He was the one person in the entire region whom the colonists genuinely trusted. If the colonists had to go anywhere, Croatoan was the most logical destination, the safest harbor, the friendliest face. White understood this immediately. He tried to get there, but the storm stopped him. He told himself he would come back in spring. He didn't come back, and neither did England. One small effort was mounted in 1590. It came to nothing. Then 15 years passed without a single serious search. 15 years. The colonists disappeared in 1590. The next English settlement in North America, Jamestown, wasn't established until 1607. For 17 years, 115 English men, women, and children were out there somewhere. With no ships coming, no letters, no contact from the country that had sent them. So what actually happened to them? 4 centuries of archaeology and historical research point to an answer most people don't expect. They didn't all die. Most of them survived, they split up. A large portion of the colony, probably the majority, went to Croatoan Island and assimilated into the tribe. They stopped being English. Here is how we know. When the Jamestown colonists arrived in 1607, they started hearing the same rumor almost immediately. Native informants described people living to the south who dressed in European-style clothes and kept European-style houses. Captain John Smith recorded this. So did others. The descriptions were consistent. They all pointed toward Hatteras Island. Then, decades into the 20th century, archaeologists began excavating a site called Cape Creek on Hatteras Island. They found European artifacts buried in soil layers dating to exactly the right period. A copper signet ring engraved with a lion passant, the kind worn by Elizabethan gentlemen in England. English pewter, a sword guard. Not trade goods, not souvenirs. Personal objects, items that belonged to people who were living there. Not passing through, living. Then in 2012, researchers examined the original maps that John White himself had drawn. On one of them, there was a small patch of paper glued carefully over a section of the image. Someone had hidden something. Researchers used light imaging technology to look beneath it. Underneath the patch was a symbol, the same symbol White used across all his maps to mark a fort. It was inland, at the junction of two rivers, roughly 50 miles from Roanoke. No historian had known it was there. It had been hidden for 400 years. By whom? For what reason? Nobody is certain, but it suggests the colonists had a secondary plan that never made it into the official record. A place they intended to go if Roanoke didn't hold. Not all of them went south. Some went north. And in 1607, Wahun Seneca, the man the English called Powhatan, told the Jamestown colonists something remarkable. He had recently destroyed a group of people who had been living peacefully with a coastal tribe near the Chesapeake Bay. For years, he ordered them killed, because a prophecy had told him that a nation from the Chesapeake would one day rise and destroy his kingdom. John Smith believed this group were survivors from Roanoke. If Smith was right, some of those colonists had survived for 17 years. 17 years, working, eating, raising children, building a life inside a world England didn't even know they had found, then killed in a single night. Their bones were never recovered. And Virginia Dare, John White's granddaughter, the first English child born in America, we know nothing. Not one verifiable fact about what happened to her after her grandfather's sails shrank over the horizon in 1587. She was 17 months old when he left. If she survived, she would have been 20 years old when Jamestown was founded. She left no record, no grave, no name in any document that survives. If she lived, she became something England had no category for. A person born English, who grew up not English, who had no memory of England, who belonged entirely to a world her own country had abandoned. In some sense, the first American, and England had no interest in that story. That is the part that never makes it into the textbooks. England never really tried to find them. Not seriously, not in proportion to 115 missing people. Raleigh lost his charter. His rivals maneuvered him out. Elizabeth died in 1603. The new king had different priorities. The colony became a cautionary tale instead of a search and rescue operation. And 115 people who had crossed an ocean on England's promise were quietly written off. The word Croatoan was pointing exactly where they went. It was right there on the post when White arrived. It was the answer. He saw it. He knew it. He tried to follow it and the sea pushed him back. So he left. And that word sat carved into the post for years, then decades, until the wood rotted into the ground and the answer rotted with it. Historians call Roanoke the first American mystery. But that framing gets it wrong. It isn't really a mystery. The colonists left a forwarding address. Croatoan. The mystery isn't where they went. The mystery is why nobody followed. Why? When 115 people vanished, the country that had sent them decided their disappearance was more useful as a warning than their survival was as a story. They were abandoned while they were still alive. Then they were abandoned again by history. The Croatoan people, who in all likelihood absorbed what remained of that colony, were themselves scattered, displaced, and stripped of their name over the following centuries. Their descendants, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, roughly 55,000 people, still live in the same land today. For generations, they have been trying to be recognized by the government of the country that was built in the same soil their ancestors share. The answer was always right there. We just kept not looking. In every language, in every era, the hardest word to say isn't help. It's the carved word on the post that everyone walks past, stares at, understands perfectly, and chooses not to follow. Croatoan. They told us exactly where they went. We just never gave a fuck.